Why would we be asking for food if the place is boarded up and nobody's lived here for a long time? What makes you think there's fresh groceries?
Two words. Canned goods.
Hey guys, what is happening? Niyat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we'll be looking at the deadly neurotoxins released by Flora in The Happening, the 2008 comedy by M. Night Shyamalan, which was a perplexing attempt at creating a B-grade horror film about environmentalism. The Happening is essentially a self-defense mechanism triggered by tree and plant matter by way of releasing a neurotoxin that affects humans as a response to the years of pollution and global warming they've had to endure. Once the neurotoxin reaches people, we begin to see a breakdown in their mental states, beginning with mild confusion and memory loss, progressing towards complete disorientation, which eventually compels individuals to end their life. It's explained that plants have an innate ability to sense people who give off bad vibes, and we see them cull the population of the Northeast accordingly. Initially, we see that while most people were affected, there were some who were fine and had to witness the horror, before it eventually spread to them. This has to be one of the funniest movies I have ever seen about mass death, unintentionally so. This film could have been fantastic if they embraced it for what it was, instead of trying to make it more intelligent than it really is. There are so many inaccuracies that set this film off in a bad way, beginning with a false Einstein quote about bees in Marky Mark's classroom. The film opens with an unsettling musical score by James Newton Howard and 2 minutes of aggressive clouds. We then head to New York, where we can see heaps of people going about their day. The first clue given to us about the nature of the toxin and the way it picks its victims is given to us with the quick introduction of two friends reading on a park bench. One is reading a violent book about killers who are deciding what to do with a crippled child, and she mentions that she's forgotten where she's up to, twice. All the while there are sounds of people screaming, alerting the other one to the strange happenings around her. People are essentially either standing absolutely still, walking backwards, or inflicting harm on themselves. We notice that animals are unaffected, as a dog brings its owner a ball to play with, who just stands there unresponsive. We then see the woman from before stabbing her own neck in a horrific display. A few minutes later, and a few blocks further up from Central Park, we then begin to notice construction workers are deliberately walking off the buildings and plummeting to their deaths. This was just so shocking to see, and the reaction of one of the workers, witnessing the senseless deaths of his colleagues around him, hit me hard. But after the opening scenes, the film plateaus and doesn't rouse anything from me other than laughter, and it fails to reach the same level of intensity again. We then head to Philadelphia, where we meet Elliot, a sincere and gentle high school teacher, who asks his students if they've read an article in the New York Times. Genius.
Look, I don't know if you guys have heard about this article in the New York Times about honeybees vanishing.
The class is then interrupted by an emergency staff meeting, where the teachers are informed that the country is under attack by an unknown force using an airborne chemical toxin. Elliot points out that a park is a strange place for an attack such as this, but nobody else seems to take note of it. School is indefinitely suspended, but the assumption by everybody early on is that they'll be back within a few days. Elliot and Alma then watch a news report that explains that the neurotoxin is blocking neurotransmitters in a specific order, causing those infected to lose their drive for self-preservation, which instead switches in reverse, causing them to harm themselves.
Toxin works and
It makes you kill yourself. Just when you thought there couldn't be any more evil that could be invented.
Worried about their proximity to New York, Elliot, Thelma, his colleague Julian, and his daughter Jess make their way by train to Harrisburg. Just as they leave, we see that the toxin has spread to Philadelphia. Elliot notes once again that the Philadelphia incident occurred near a park. With more reports of attacks in the Northeast, coupled with the supposed complete loss of communication, the train conductors terminate operations in Filbert. What's funny to note is that the conductors say that they've lost communication with everybody, yet in the next shot we see people on their phones talking to family in other states. Footage is then awkwardly shown of more attacks, and the reactions are just awful. I feel this may have been attributed to either miscommunication about what it is they were supposed to be seeing on their phones, or just a poor choice of background actors. Upon rewatching this for analysis, I began to understand why the actions of Elliot, Thelma, and Jess seemed so weird to me, as they often reacted with little anger or emotive connection. And then it hit me. This was a deliberate choice by Shyamalan to justify why they survived for so long. Unlike everyone else around them, they constantly gave off good vibes. Throughout the movie, while everybody else was freaking out, they remained relatively calm. Yes, they had their issues, problems, and fights, but the way they dealt with it was very tame. In the diner, everybody drives off frantically and selfishly, which was an allusion to the way we treat the Earth with little care or regard. The only people who came to their aid and offered them a ride were a couple who run a nursery. These two have a deep connection with plants, and it's the nursery owner that gives them some keen insight into what is happening. He tells them that plants can release chemicals capable of doing this, before he explains that they can also respond to human stimuli.
Okay, babies, we are going to be going, but we will be back soon, okay?
What didn't sit right with me was the fact that he and his partner died. If the plants are able to sense our vibes and see if we were a threat before attacking, then why were so many good people killed? I guess the director's answer seems to be that they were in a large group, but to me that's just lazy. Julian leaves Jess with Elliot and Alma and heads to Princeton in search of his wife.
Oh, you go get her, Jules, okay?
Of course, man, of course. Come on, this awesome weird event. That's all. We're all gonna be fine.
He arrives in Princeton, which has already been affected, and we see the mathematic Riddler and the other passengers crash into a tree. We then see a group of people begin to converge at a crossroad, where they all explain they've just come from an area that is affected by what is happening. They all decide to get off the road and make their way west in an attempt to find refuge in a county called Erindale, which is supposedly only found on local maps. The group splits up into two, those wanting to leave now and those who needed more time to pack. Urged by Jess, Elliot and Alma decide to venture in the smaller first group. It's not long before the resentful plants attack the second group, which are fighting amongst themselves and therefore giving off bad vibes.
My firearm is my friend! It will not leave my side!
Private Oster.
What's interesting to note was that there was a mood ring used by Elliot in the film. In truth, mood rings change according to changes in temperature, not feelings. But we do spot that Elliot's mood ring was blue, representing calm.
Maybe people are setting off the plants?
What are you saying? That guy was crazy. We have to save them.
They're already dead.
It's clear that Shyamalan was trying to suggest this was the reason the toxin did not affect Elliot or Alma, who were gentle pacifists. The small group make it to a display home in what has to be the funniest scene in the whole film.
Just going to talk in a very positive manner, giving off good vibes. Plastic.
This is followed by what has to be one of the most frustrating and annoying moments in the movie. We see them reach a home that has been boarded up, where the two young boys begin acting strangely aggressive. We then see them banging on the door demanding entry, leading to the inhabitants of the house to respond by shooting them. I can understand the director wanted to reinforce how bad people can be, but this felt out of place. And it seemed like he wanted to just kill them off so we could be left with the three principal characters. One misstep leading to another, they arrive at a home of a reclusive woman who awkwardly invites them into her home. We find out that she's been living by herself since the death of her husband in the war, tending to her plants in peace.
I mend my own things. I grow my own food. Although I ain't got the touch.
The problem is, the arrival of Elliot and Alma have thrown her off kilter, and she begins to suspect a foul ulterior motive behind their sudden appearance. The woman begins acting aggressively, and as a result also succumbs to the toxin, in what has to be probably the saddest death in the whole film. I mean, her family had a shelter that helped hide slaves. She invited them into her home, and honestly, if it weren't for their arrival, she would have lived the rest of her days in peace. I really did not appreciate the way they made her out to look like a villain. Admittedly, a lot of people were put off by her hitting Jess's hand when she went to reach for the biscuit, and telling her that she shouldn't touch things that don't belong to her. But if you watch carefully, she was just trying to teach her manners, and literally a minute later, she smiles and hands the young girl a cookie. The happening suddenly stops occurring, and is simply labelled as an unexplained phenomenon. This encourages the world to continue going on as though nothing had happened. Elliot and Alma's relationship is strengthened through the ordeal, as they dealt with not only the happening, but also the responsibility of caring for Julian's daughter. Some time has passed and we notice that they have adopted Jess, and we also find out that they have a baby on the way. At the end of the film, a theory is offered to us by a botanist, who suggests that the attack in the northeast was a warning to humans to change their ways, as they were a threat to the planet, but it looks like his ideology and opinions were shared with only a minority of people. Having not learnt from their mistakes, the nonchalant attitudes of people and their inability to change leads to a second happening 3 months later, which occurs in Paris, suggesting that this time the attack would be on a global scale. Writing is a difficult art form, as is directing, and being responsible for both is a tremendous undertaking that few people can accomplish successfully and/or consistently. I truly think Shyamalan shot himself in the foot by not having another writer on board to help see his vision through. We know the man has some incredible ideas, and he's responsible for some of my favourite films of all time. Signs gave me chills. The Sixth Sense was heavy. Unbreakable was phenomenal. All these and the recent Split are proof that he is capable of greatness. But all these films had time and great love put into them. This film lacked heart, and with Shyamalan bragging that this was the easiest and quickest film he has ever shot, it really does show, I'm afraid. Since it came out in theaters, I've seen this thing at least 5 times, and giggled my freaking ass off each time.
Elliot! 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 Elliot!
Plan on murdering me in my sleep.
What? No!
Mark Wahlberg's optimistic yet confused expressions are reason enough to watch this film. Wahlberg has himself admitted that he regrets taking the role, and joked, could you blame him for wanting to play a science teacher? No, Marky Mark, we can't. Especially considering Shyamalan wrote the film with him in mind. Personally, there were just so many odd script and character choices that detracted from the storytelling, and were there simply to make the film feel quirky.
We're packing hot dogs for the road. You know, hot dogs get a bad rap.
This film is supposed to be a tragedy, and in an unconventional way it succeeds. One of Shyamalan's worst films, yet for me it still has so much replayability. I love this beautiful mess of a film, as it continues to surprise me as to how funny it actually is. Well, that's all folks. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video on The Happening. I'm curious to hear what you guys think of the neurotoxin and the film itself, so please share that in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and to subscribe to stay up to date on all my content. As always, it's been a pleasure. Niyat here with Film Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.